This is marriage wisdom for wives who want a long marriage. One of the quietest shifts that can happen inside a marriage is not always conflict. It's when respect begins to change. Not loudly, not suddenly, but quietly over time. Most people think that if something is wrong in a marriage, it will be obvious. They think it will show up in arguments, in disagreements, in loud moments that clearly signal something is off. But in many long marriages, that's not how it begins. It begins in subtle ways, in tone, in response, in how someone is spoken to, or how they are no longer spoken to at all. Respect does not always disappear in one moment. It often shifts in small, almost unnoticeable ways. And because it happens gradually, it can go unaddressed for a long time. Sometimes it starts with frustration that was never fully expressed. Sometimes it starts with disappointment, expectations that were never met, but never clearly communicated either. And instead of being talked through, those feelings began to settle internally. And when feelings are not processed, they don't disappear. They begin to shape behavior. Correction becomes sharper. Patience becomes shorter. Appreciation becomes less frequent. And over time, something begins to shift in the atmosphere of the marriage. But there is another layer that is not talked about enough. And that is what happens when independence begins to change the dynamic of the relationship. There are many women today who are strong, capable, independent, financially stable, able to provide for themselves and even for their households. And there is nothing wrong with that. Strength in a woman is a beautiful thing. Independence is not the problem. But sometimes, without realizing it, independence can begin to shift how a woman sees her role inside the marriage. It can slowly introduce a mindset of, I can handle everything. I don't really need him. And again, this does not always come out in words. It shows up in behavior, in decision making, and how much room is given for the husband to contribute, and how much value is placed on his role. Because when someone feels like they can carry everything on their own, they may unintentionally begin to treat their partner as optional. Not unwanted, but unnecessary. And that is a very different emotional experience inside a marriage. Because for many men, respect is deeply tied to how they are positioned in the relationship. It is tied to whether they feel valued, needed, considered. And when that begins to change, even quietly, it affects them. But here's the part that often goes unspoken. Many men will not always verbalize this shift. They may not sit down and explain that they feel less needed. They may not clearly articulate that something feels different. Instead, they begin to withdraw. Not always physically, but emotionally. They speak less. They engage less. They stop offering input in the same way because somewhere inside they have begun to feel like their presence does not carry the same weight. And when that feeling sits long enough, it creates distance. Not because there is no love, but because something foundational has shifted. Marriage was never designed to be about who is the breadwinner. It was never meant to become a quiet competition of who contributes more. Marriage was designed to be a partnership. Two people bringing what they have and building something together. That does not always mean equal in the exact same way, but it does mean equal in value, equal in respect, equal in consideration. Because when one person begins to feel like the other is no longer needed, the emotional balance of the relationship begins to shift. And that shift can be quiet, but it is powerful. This is where many people become confused. Because from the outside, everything can still look fine. The home is running. Responsibilities are being handled. There are no major arguments. But internally, something has changed. And if that change is not addressed, resentment can begin to grow. Resentment does not always come from loud conflict. Sometimes it grows in silence. Sometimes it grows when someone feels unseen, unappreciated, or unnecessary. And when those feelings are not acknowledged, they settle, they accumulate, and over time, they begin to shape the emotional climate of the marriage. This is why intentional respect matters so much. Not just in what is said, but in how it is demonstrated daily. Respect is in tone. Respect is in timing. Respect is in how you respond when you don't feel like responding well. Respect is in how you include your spouse, even when you are capable of handling things on your own. Because capability should never replace connection, and independence should never remove partnership. A strong marriage is not built on one person proving they can do everything. It is built on two people choosing to do life together, even when they could do it alone. That choice is what protects respect. That choice is what maintains emotional connection. And that choice is what prevents resentment from quietly taking root. Because once resentment settles in, it changes how people see each other. It changes how they speak, how they respond, how they show up in the relationship. And if it goes unaddressed long enough, it can eventually change the direction of the marriage. That is why these conversations matter. Not to place blame, not to criticize, but to bring awareness. Because awareness gives you the opportunity to make adjustments early, before something small becomes something difficult to reverse. Long marriages are not sustained by accident. They are sustained by intention, by awareness, by choosing to protect what matters, even in the quiet moments when nothing seems wrong. Because those quiet moments are often where the most important shifts begin. And that is how long marriages are built.